Welcome to the Quit Vaping podcast, the podcast designed to make you a non-listener. In this show, I'm not going to scare you away from a life of vaping. What I am going to do is show you just how good your life can be without it. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show. Introduce yourself and just tell my audience anything that you want about you, who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name's Kim Severson. I always like to say I'm the weight loss coach for people who hate dieting because that's the people that I tend to work with. People who have been on every restrictive diet in the world their entire lives, usually starting at a very young age. And they've tried restrictive approach after restrictive approach. And it might work for a period of time, but it felt awful that entire time. It really took away this part of their life, like food, exciting experiences with food, finding daily satisfaction in food. It took that part away. And maybe they could sustain it for a little bit, but eventually they can't. Eventually it backfires. They often end up swinging away in the other direction and overeating. So we take away all of that. I help my people lose weight in a way that feels doable and sustainable and kind and gentle and like reconnecting with your body. I always say it feels more like self-care than punishment, which is how all those restrictive diets felt. So that's who I work with. That's who I love to help.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I do the same thing with my vapors. I'm like, I don't even care if you quit vaping for good. It's about learning how to be with yourself without needing to escape.
Yes, yes.
And cool. I have a question for you. So I did keto in 2020. I did keto it was not a good year for Andrew. This is before I became a life coach, learned all the tools, how to be compassionate with myself. And I didn't eat like fruit for an entire year. And I think 3 or 4 times throughout the whole year, I had carbs and I would binge and throw up. So like not healthy looking back. What do you think, like the biggest objection people have to what you do is? What is their biggest concern going in?
Yeah, I think my approach is kind of a little radical when they
Mm-hmm.
hear it. Like it doesn't feel radical at all to me. It actually feels like the most normal thing in the world. But when you've only been told that restriction is the way, right? Like you have to really suffer for weight loss, or you can't have a single carb and you have to get like really good at feeling that discomfort and overcoming it. If that's the only approach you've ever been introduced to, because that's most of the diet industry, like, yeah, it's going to seem kind of fringe or kind of subversive to be like, wait, I can lose weight and it's not going to feel hard. And I'm not going to feel like what you were describing, where it's
Yeah.
like, which sounds like I was so deprived for so long that when I finally let myself have that thing that I was really craving, you're like out of control around it,
Yeah.
you know? But anyway, so to answer your question, they hear my approach and they're like, can that work? That seems
Yeah.
too easy, right? Or that seems like too pain-free. And I think it's also coupled with like a lot of the other restrictive diets out there use that in their marketing. You know, Weight Watchers will say, like, you can eat pizza, you can eat real food. And it's like, well, you have to starve yourself all day
Isn't that
in
great? Yeah.
order for that to happen. So I
Yep.
think that might be people's objection is like, can that really happen? You know, or am I going to be able to sustain that?
Yeah.
But we often work on building that belief in the beginning of coaching and taking those small little steps to show them that, yeah, this is a totally different way.
Yeah. And so I was overweight when I was 13. I've used so many vices, girl, so many vices. A
Yeah,
lot of them are
yeah.
like heavy drugs all the way up to like food, which people don't consider a
Right.
heavy drug, to caffeine and all. And like I hated myself at 13 and I literally did everything. I remember doing Atkins with my mom. I did Weight Watchers.
Mhm. Yep.
There was like for a while some kind of hydroxycut pill or whatever
Same. Yeah. All the
all the
things I have also done. Yeah.
oh, it's so bad. And keto
Yeah.
was the last thing I did where I didn't realize it was coming from just having a horrible relationship with myself. And I thought, like looking back at it with a coach brain now, I thought weight loss was going to help me love myself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's where most people start, right? They're like, if I could just change my body, then everything will be amazing.
Yeah. So like the first layer I teach my vapors now is let's just try to drop the shame we have over ourselves and who we are in
Mhm.
whatever capacity we can manage that.
Yeah.
And what people start to see is like right when you do that, you actually want to vape less.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It cleans up so much right away.
Yeah. So I think people start to learn, like, especially if you're doing this for a while, like I still overeat sometimes, but the conversation in my head when it happens is so different than it used to be.
Yeah. What's the conversation now in your head?
It's like it used to be like there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't have done that. It's bad. And then it would lead to restricting and then binging, right? Now it's like, are you okay? What's going on? And
Yeah.
also sometimes really it's like it's
Yeah.
compassionate. It's like I'm almost talking to myself as if somebody I like cared about,
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and if it's like sometimes I don't even have the are you okay? It's like all good. I wanted that and I went for it and it's okay.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many things I want to say about that because I feel like as coaches, we get to be that compassionate voice for our clients first.
Yeah.
And then eventually, as we work together, they start developing that own inner self compassionate voice. And it really shifts so much, even when we're the ones, being that presence for them to be like, hey, it's not bad. It's not wrong. You had a good reason, right? There was some part of you that had a good reason to do what you did. Let's just explore it. And let's see if there's another way you can give that to yourself or you can support yourself through these things. It just changes the whole conversation. And it makes it, again, feel like so much more, you're so much more in connection with yourself. And that just makes it easier to change your behavior.
Yeah, I think it makes it possible because, like, if you think about, so the way I like to explain is like, imagine you have a kid, right? And you're just verbally abusing them. They're not about to open up and be vulnerable with you after that, right? They're
Right.
gonna run away and hide. I mean, that's the natural response. So it's like, why do you think that you can solve your problems from treating yourself that way? You're
Right.
never gonna figure out what's actually going on for yourself when you think there's something wrong and horrible for you. Like, you cannot create vulnerability in that space.
Right. Exactly. I use that same analogy and example, but it's interesting and I'm not sure if you notice this with your vapors. Like sometimes my clients want to fight me on that a little, not in the relationship with like other people or kids, but with themselves. They're like,
Mhm.
no, if I'm really hard on myself and I have this like punitive, almost like drill sergeant voice in my head, that's when I'm gonna change my behavior.
Yeah. And
But
it's
go
just
ahead.
interesting because I did that to myself for
Yep.
literally 25 years of eating. I just thought the more hard I thought it was about discipline. I'm like, I'm not disciplined enough. The more that I can like just cut things out and really force myself, the more it's gonna work. And like I said, I went to keto, right? Where I was literally, I remember I went to a wedding. It's so embarrassing too, because restriction like that and then binging actually adds more shame and it makes the problem worse. Like I went to a wedding and it was an at-home wedding. So I was around all these people I knew my whole life and in an intimate setting with all of them. And I ate pasta and I ate so much of it that I literally threw up in the toilet in front of everyone. Like that is not, you know what I mean? What about that is healthy or loving or going to get me to the result that I want?
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time, were you aware of like, hey, this seems like a pretty extreme reaction to
So
deprivation?
but I had no idea that I didn't even. So, I mean, the fundamental thing that we learn as coaches, at least the way that we've been taught from our certification, is like your thoughts are optional. So I didn't know that there was optional thoughts. I genuinely remember the first time I was 25. This was like a couple months after the whole keto shenanigans. I would say a year or so. I remember for the very first time in my life, I sat down and took a deep breath and I tried to name the emotion in my body. I had
Hmm.
never understood my entire life that there was anything going on under the surface. I just thought I just loved food, but it's like, no, I just didn't love feeling the way that I felt about myself.
Yes.
And there was no awareness of any of that. I knew that it was extreme, but I thought you had to be extreme to lose weight. So,
Yeah. Well, that's what we're told, right? Like
mhm.
I'm trying to shift this with my clients, and it sounds like you are too, but we're only presented keto, Weight Watchers, calorie restriction, these like really challenging, oftentimes restrictive approaches. And then the other option we're given is like, oh, just diet culture is evil. Give up on all of that and just like love the body you have, even if it's not the body that feels like home to you, which I think is so much of a better place to be, such
Yeah.
a healthier place to be.
Can we go over that really fast?
Yeah.
The body that feels like home to you. That is
Yeah.
so important. What a beautiful way of saying that.
Yeah.
So good.
Right. Because, I've been in all kinds of different sizes of bodies. And it is like, yes, can you do the thought work to love yourself in whatever size body you have? Absolutely. And should you love yourself regardless of like what your physical body looks like? Absolutely. But I think we also get to have the conversation with ourselves of like, well, what feels good to me
Yeah.
and why? I know I was 40 pounds heavier 6 years ago and I couldn't play with my kids the same way I can now. I didn't have the energy levels that I have now. I couldn't
Yeah.
like do the running and the exercising that I want to do. And that gets to have a place in the conversation too, I think.
Yeah, it's even the same with vaping. I just like I don't think people give themselves permission to figure out like if you want to vape, that's fine. Do it. Like again, you got to drop the shame and like what feels good to you. Do you want to hit it once a day? Do you even want it in your life? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. There's no right or wrong answer, but like so many people aren't even allowing themselves to make that conversation. They just think they're
Yeah.
bad and wrong all the way
Right.
through. It's
Yeah,
like,
which is such like it takes all the nuance out of it,
yeah,
to just be like any amount of this is wrong versus like what is the relationship that I want to have with this thing, whether it's vaping, whether it's food, or even overeating, right? Because I still overeat on purpose sometimes.
I still vape, I still overeat. And I went to a wedding this week and I hit a vape a bunch of
Yeah.
times. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm at a wedding. This seems like an appropriate time to go kind of crazy on a substance if that's what I feel like doing. And I show up in a way I still want to. And I felt completely aligned all night long, hitting my
Yeah.
brother's vape. It's like
Yeah.
all good.
I know. Sometimes if I'm going to like go out to a fancy dinner, right, where like somebody else is making me this beautiful food and I'm paying a lot of money for it, yeah, I'm probably going to eat past the point of like just satisfied.
Yeah,
I'm
for
probably going
sure.
to overeat, but like it's for reasons that I like. But I've given myself the opportunity to like explore those reasons.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, ask myself, like, what kind of relationship do I want to have with this thing? What amount of it is okay with me? What amount of even like overindulging is okay with me?
Hmm.
Because we get to have both of those things. I think that thing that people don't do is have that conversation with themselves.
I don't think they know they can. And I think
Right.
that it takes a decent amount of work and an outside perspective. Like you're right. Cause like what we do as coaches, I see as such a normal human being thing to do now at this point. But like
Mhm.
having compassion for yourself is not the normal. It's totally the fringe. Like,
Yeah.
and you're right. It's like, oh no, 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 no. If I let myself vape, it's going to become a problem. It's like, it's because you're not letting yourself even explore that conversation that it's a
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. I am probably going to record a podcast episode about this because I had a day yesterday where I was just like, I woke up in a funk
Okay.
with like a black cloud over my head. And there's something going on in my personal life that I was like, this is probably affecting how I'm feeling today. But it was also just kind of inexplicable that I was just feeling like low energy, kind of just in a shitty mood. And I think in the past, I would have either not acknowledged that at all and just like go, go, go
Hmm.
throughout my daily
I'm
life.
guilty of
And
that.
then, it would have like come to a head at some point, and I either would have been like over drinking or overeating or who knows. But because I've been doing this work that I do for so long, I was able to like name the emotion, get curious about it, ask myself why I was feeling this way. And even if there wasn't like a direct reason, I just kind of woke up in a funk and there was the other stuff going on, but just able to be with myself through it the way a good friend would, like,
Yeah.
hey, what's up for you today? And then ask myself what I needed and, kind of practice self care throughout the day. It never even occurred to me to overeat. And that occurred to me this morning when I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even need to like do anything to escape my feelings or cover them up or distract from them. I was just like kind to myself all day.
Yeah. It sounds like such a simple concept too, like, oh, you're eating over your feelings, but then to actually put it in practice, like I hear so often, I know this is how I used to feel with food, but with vaping, I hear so many of my clients say, like, this is just my friend. Like, I don't know what to do without my friend. It's like
Yep.
the reason it's your friend is because you do not validate what you're experiencing without vaping is just letting you avoid that. It's like
Yeah.
if you can just name, I'm telling you that one time when I think I was 25 years old, and I sat down and I very intentionally cleared everything away. I'm like, I'm giving myself 10 minutes to feel an emotion. I don't know what that means. And like I started breathing. And then I eventually felt this like really crazy buzzing in my chest and I wanted to get up and I naturally jumped up and I'm like, wait a minute, I have 8 minutes left, right?
Right.
I'm like, and I was able to sit with it. I'm like, I think this is anxiety. If I had to name it, I feel angsty and like I want to get up. And just to even name that emotion for the first time, half of the desire to eat or escape myself just disappeared. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it really is. It really is. And so I think that's huge for people to be like, hey, can you just be with yourself for a little bit? Can you name this emotion? Can you maybe explore and like acknowledge for yourself why it's coming up? And then ask yourself, I love that question. And I use that with my clients all the time. Like, what do I need? We don't even have to try to change the thought and get
Mhm.
ourselves into another emotional state. Like, I always say to myself, all energy always moves. I will not feel this way forever. But
Yeah.
while I'm here, what do I need? How can I support myself? And just that takes away so much of the need to over anything, over vape, over drink, overeat later in the day.
Yeah. It's like you're not even it's not a physical hunger. It's just like I
Mhm.
need to feel differently because I'm trying not to feel anything at all.
Right, exactly. And I think the antidote to that is like, hey, what if you felt it?
Yeah. And
You
it's
know?
weird. And I don't know if we can like I've tried doing this for about 3 years. Like there's somatic tools and stuff, but like you can't really explain how to feel a feeling until you actually sit down and just decide I'm going to let whatever comes into my body come into it and just
Yeah.
be curious.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of great news for people who want to stop overeating or stop vaping or whatever it is. It's like, you don't have to do a lot. Yeah, there are like practical tools and strategies that we work with our clients on, but I think it is just that willingness to like open up to the experience that's true for us in the moment, which isn't like a lot of, it doesn't look like a lot of physical work or
Mhm.
doing anything, but it's just like going inward and getting to know that part of yourself and building your capacity to feel those things.
Yeah. So I love your podcast name and I've listened to some of your episodes. Amazing. It's
Yeah.
Weight Loss Doesn't Have to Suck is the
Yes.
podcast.
Yep.
So can you kind of like talk about that whole concept of weight loss not having to suck? I think I mean, we've already been doing it, having this conversation, but like, can you say more about it? And then I do want to ask you a question after.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's my approach. And it looks different for everybody, but generally it's like whatever felt awful about diets. We don't do any of that stuff. So for most people that is being given a list of like rules and restrictions and foods they have to cut out and things that they can't have. It's that felt awful. It's that
Mhm.
sucked. But also, you've got to like download an app and spend a big portion of your day like looking up the foods that you're allowed to have and tracking all the calories or the Weight Watchers points or whatever. You basically have to like become a new person overnight who
Yeah.
is willing to do that stuff, but also has the time and the effort and energy. Um, so all of those are elements about diets that suck for people. And I think also, if your friend were to invite you out to dinner tonight, it's like you can't just go and do that. You have
Right.
to either like do all the mental gymnastics to plan your life around that, or just, go there and eat something sad and unsatisfying, or maybe not go at all. So, all of those things are what make traditional restrictive diets really burdensome and oppressive and ultimately unsustainable for people.
Yeah.
So, we don't do any of that. We say there is no food that's not allowed. There is no calorie limit. There's nothing that's like off the table. There's nothing you can't have. The weight loss happens through connection to your body. It's one of the first things that I work on with people.
Yep.
So let's get like Weight Watchers or MyFitnessPal or whatever it is. It's not going to tell you when you're ready to eat, how much is right for you. We're going to start letting your body do that. So we talk a lot about like, hey, this is what my body is signaling to me. This is what it's telling me when it's actually hungry and ready to start a meal versus I just want to eat something, or I'm just having a craving, or, oh, it's 8 o'clock, it's breakfast time.
Hmm.
Like we don't let anything kind of external tell us when to eat. We learned how to let our body tell us that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, too, meals end for the most part. People don't even have to do this perfectly, but like when your body signals to you, hey, I'm good. And I talk a lot with my clients about what that feels like specifically in their body, but it's this like light feeling of satisfaction, which is different than full, which is different than like way over full, which is where most people stop.
Yeah. That's
So,
it's so good. And that's why it's long term too. Like it's not, you cannot get results fueled with negative emotion and like you said, oppression. You have to give yourself the plan that feels good to you the whole way through. And then you understand that it's not even about the result. It's learning how to feel good
yeah,
enough to get the result.
right, right. And that's what a lot of my clients say to me. One, that like, oh, yeah, I lost weight and that was amazing. But like the relationship that I built with myself and
Hmm.
with my body and with food, like that's the real
Hmm.
results.
100%.
Yeah. So all of that is great. But also, like, if the process can feel good to you, of course you're going to show up. And of
Hmm.
course you're going to keep doing it day after day. Not to say that it's not challenging sometimes, we still have to do the work around
So
urges and cravings. Yeah.
that's my question next
Yeah.
is weight loss doesn't have to suck. Agreed. So neither is quitting vaping. But what are the actual parts that I would say are not sucky, but uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Uncomfortable is what I want to use.
I actually have a podcast episode that's called something like when it does actually suck sometimes.
Okay, cool. No, I love that.
It's not to say that you're going to be on easy street, but I think if you're doing things that actually feel good to you, you're like, hey, I get to eat this food that isn't just like the saddest dry chicken and the saddest like plain vegetables. I'm actually eating things I'm looking forward to. Um, it makes it easier to do the more challenging stuff, which is like, so I was talking about letting your body tell you when it's ready to start a meal, when it's ready to stop, which is amazing, amazing skill. But there's plenty of times where that feels hard, or
Yeah.
maybe you don't want to, right? You just want to eat something because you have a craving for ice cream, or you don't want to stop at just satisfied. You want to eat more than that because it tastes so good and the experience is so nice, you know? And that's the work that we do, which is like, okay, noticing that, you know, talking about like noticing and naming your emotions. I talk
Yeah.
to my clients a lot about noticing the lower brain, noticing that little voice that's like, just keep going, just do, you know, this isn't going to matter. We'll start fresh tomorrow. Noticing how your lower brain is trying to talk you into overeating,
Yeah.
pausing, bringing in that higher self that's like, yeah, but I have these goals, right? I have this way I want to look and feel, or I don't even like the way I'm going to feel in 20 minutes when I'm way too full. So, like pausing, bringing in that higher brain or the highest self as well, and letting both of those sides of you have that conversation.
Yeah. That's
Sometimes that can
compassionate.
be, yeah, it's compassionate, but sometimes it can be uncomfortable work.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we work on, like willingness to do that, tolerance of the discomfort of that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ask the question I like to ask in that moment is just, do you actually want it? And that's not a loaded question. Actually
Mhm.
check in. If you're having a really intense craving to hit a vape or whatever, go buy one at the store, just check in with yourself. Why do I want this? And what's the result? What do I actually want
Yeah.
from even from your higher self, or like just without even like I call it the animal or the human brain, without even that, it's like, what do you actually want and why?
Yeah.
Just make sure you like the answer. Give yourself a minute. And I found that that's the most important skill set when it comes to me not getting food when I'm not hungry, is I just
Mhm.
take a minute to check in, even halfway through a meal. It's like, this is still here. I could totally eat the whole thing. I just want to take 1 second to see, like, do I actually want that? And if I just sit down for a minute and just breathe for literally 10 seconds, like, I'm like, I think I'm good. And I've been
Yes.
doing this thing lately where I bring home leftovers now. I'm like, I don't actually want that. Like, I'm going to be uncomfortably full. And I would love to have this later tonight as a second
Yes.
meal.
Yeah, exactly. Or tomorrow, or, you know, share it with somebody.
Yeah.
But I think that's like a super skill that you're describing. And it sounds so easy, but I call it the pause with my people. It
Yeah.
literally just is. Because, you know, when you're eating something, you can sometimes almost get into like autopilot
It's
mode.
autopilot for sure. Yep.
Right. And it's just taking that little pause to be like, hey, what's going on with me?
Yeah.
How do I feel physically in my body? Do I even want the rest of this? Would I be okay without it? You
Yeah.
know?
And that's not a skill set that you just have. And you like, I've done this. I've gone through stages where it's like I've been developing that. I practice it regularly. It's good. My brain's ready for it to go. And then there's like 2 months where I totally don't do it at all. And it's like, what the hell happened? You know? So like
Right.
I found with this work, like people think it's like linear and you get there and it's like, nope. I think for coaches, it's probably easier to maintain it because this is what we do, right?
Right.
But like it's a skill set you have to keep practicing. And if you fall out again, it's like I think that one of the main skill sets we learn that sticks pretty well is the compassion for ourselves. I have seen most of that stick. Some of it goes away, but like the wonderful thing is that if you can keep being compassionate with yourself, you'll make space for the waves and it won't
Right.
make it a problem for yourself.
Yeah. And I think normalizing that nonlinear process is a
Hmm.
big part of this too, because people think like, oh, it sounds so simple. Just pause and check in with myself. Like that should just be able to click in as a new habit. But
Yeah.
it doesn't, right? It is so normal to start doing that, maybe make some progress, and then completely forget about it
Yeah.
or completely disconnect from your body. And then like a week goes by and then you remember. But that's a critical moment too, because what most people do is beat themselves up or think that they're never going to get this because they fell off a little bit.
Yeah.
But really, it's like, no, that's so normal. And you can just get back to it. And every time you kind of return to this work, you're building that new skill. You're making it that much more likely that it's going to be automatic going forward.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
it's
so I have
a
a
it's a process. Yeah.
I have a question for you about I want your perspective as weight loss coach on the vaping. So a lot of my clients, they never want to touch nicotine ever again. And after doing this, that was my
Okay.
viewpoint for 2.5 years. I think that's polarized now. I think like I believe this with any substance, and I don't think there's any limit to this. Any substance can be helpful, right? Like it's okay. Just check in, make sure you like the relationship you have with it. So what do you want to say to people who, especially moms, I think they're like, there's very black and white what they're thinking, right? And I think that comes
Yeah.
from not being able to trust themselves because they haven't done this work. But what do you think about never touching it ever again? What is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. I mean, I always like to give my clients so many options,
Yeah.
right? Because again, this is giving them their agency back, right? Or their ability to choose and letting it all be neutral and just kind of trying on your different options of like, I could never vape again ever. And that might be the right choice for somebody.
Yeah.
Or I can vape all the time every day or something in between, right? And again, it goes back to like, what is the relationship with this thing that you want? Because all these options are on the table. Let's just explore like what feels good to you and also what feels doable to you. Like this does not have to be, and I don't know if this is how you approach it with your clients, but like the relationship that you choose with vaping today does not have to be the same relationship that you're going to have with vaping 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from
See,
now.
that's a really, I think just from you saying that, it shows your experience in this field because I didn't used to believe that. I mean, I've only been coaching for 3 years, but I'm gaining that ability now. It's like now I hit a vape and it's like 2 years ago that wasn't okay. And it's like, wait a minute, it's okay. And maybe I'll waft back and go never again. Right. But I feel completely in control. And I mean, like, I'm really, there's no disintegrity of what I'm doing with hitting a vape every once in a while. So, and I feel good about that, but that might change. But I think that that wasn't always that way. It was still being hard on myself, right? It's like, nope, I said no. And yeah. So,
Right. Yeah. So I think giving yourself that permission
mhm,
for it to look like anything, right? It could look like not at all. It could look like quite a bit or anything in between, but let me really decide, like powerfully decide what feels good to me now. And also know that I can evolve into anything else at any time too.
yeah.
So, and also one more thing that I want to say about that is because you started to talk about all or nothing thinking. And I think
Hmm.
that's a big part of the conversation because
Yeah.
sometimes people will say, like, okay, I only want to vape at weddings, let's say. And then they vape outside of that. And this
Hmm.
totally applies to overeating too. Like, they don't do what they said they wanted to do. And then
Yeah.
they're like, well, I blew it. And now I'm a screw up. So then I might as well really go for it. And
Yeah.
that's when they swing way in the other direction. And with my overeaters, I'm like, okay, sometimes that's going to happen. That happens to me all the time. But it doesn't mean that like the day is ruined and now I'm going to eat my face off for the rest of the day. There's
Yeah.
still, you can still ask yourself, like, okay, that one incident happened, but do I want to keep it going? Is there a way I can rein this in, even though I am going a little off track right now? So helpful for people.
It's like I think the fundamental difference between pre-coach and after coach in my life was I started to give myself permission what to think, regardless of
Mhm.
what happened. And I'm still learning that. Like yesterday, I still have a coach and I got coached on, he said, what does it mean to be successful? Why can't you be, can you think about your life right now in a way that makes you feel completely successful right this moment? I'm like, oh shit, that's a really good question. So it's like I'm just giving myself permission to find all the reasons I'm successful. And I feel like I've had the best day in the whole world. And I realize I'm still being kind of an asshole to myself. You know, oh, I had to move out, I had to make this certain amount of money and have this many clients. And it's like, wait a minute. Like it just being able to just decide what you want to think because it feels good and it's not hurting anyone else and it gets you the results you want. That's the skill set. I really think that's the main
Oh my
skill set.
gosh, huge. And it feels so much better. But I
Mhm.
mean, like, this is a kind of coachy thing to say, but it is true that what you intentionally look for more evidence of, you will find, right? Or you will
Yeah.
create more of. So if I'm like, God, I always overeat and I screw up with food every weekend and I emotionally eat, like, if I take that on as an identity, of course I'm going to find more evidence for that and then probably create more evidence because
Yeah.
it, we know our thoughts and feelings drive our actions. So if I'm feeling really down on myself because I'm thinking I'm a screw up, I'm probably going to screw up more. I'm going to create more of that for myself. But if
Yeah.
I'm intentionally looking for evidence that, like, hey, I am more in control around food or vaping or whatever it is. And here's the examples of that from the past week. And here's other examples of how I am making choices that I like. If that's where I shift my focus, the same thing is going to happen, right? Where one, I feel so much better. I have a better relationship with myself. And I often find that I'm taking more of those actions that I do want to take.
Yeah, I think it's coachy, but it's also not. Like your brain is just such a simple computer. Whatever
Yeah.
you give it for input, it wants to prove output. That's just how it works. So like
Yeah.
someone, I mean, it's designed to give negative, right? It's just survival. That's how your brain's designed. And this work is like we're going up against our own brain's hardware to create results we want. And that's what's so cool about being human is that we can do that. Like animals can do that, right? Like babies can't do that. It's the whatever, the human brain, the prefrontal cortex, it allows us to do that. And it's a practice. And it's so
Yep.
uncomfortable sometimes.
I know. Yeah. But it is, again, like another one of those super skills of just thinking about what you're thinking about,
Hmm.
being like, is this serving me? Do I feel good all day or am I making myself feel terrible all day? And how is that affecting how I show up for myself?
Yeah.
And then to know I can shift it at any time on purpose.
Yep. And
So
you have to
cool.
give yourself permission. And I still have to be given permission by my coach to do that sometimes. It's just how my brain
Yeah,
works.
me too. I still have a coach too.
Yeah. But I always say, like, and I mean this with so much integrity. If you're talking to yourself like shit and treating yourself like crap, just keep vaping because at least you're going to be able to avoid it at that point instead of have to
Yeah,
sit with it all day long. It's like,
right.
it isn't even about quitting vaping. It's about becoming building a relationship with yourself where you don't want to escape yourself with substances all the time. It's the organic thing that happens when you start to actually have a better narrative in your head on purpose. You don't need to escape with things. It's like some of my clients say this all the time. It's like I don't even feel like vaping like I used to. I recognize it doesn't even make me feel good, and when I'm with myself, I can just choose to feel better. It's like there you go.
Yes, right. And we think it's the other way around,
Yeah.
right? People think like, oh, when I finally lose the weight, then everything about my inner narrative and my self-talk is going to
I'm
change.
so guilty of it still. I mean, just with
Yeah.
the success thing, just this morning, I'm like sitting down, I'm like, holy crap, like I'm waiting for this certain amount of money or whatever to feel good about myself. It's like, no, I'm going to look for all the proof of why I should feel good about myself. And I feel so much better today. And I've been showing up for myself in a way that would quote unquote be successful. Right. And like the
Yeah.
other, I'm not, it's crazy that your thoughts create your results. It's not the other way around. And it's
I
so crazy because
know.
most people are looking, it's like, oh, I'm a bad person because I'm fat. It's like, no, have you ever seen Mean Girls? It's
Yeah,
my
of course.
favorite line in that whole movie, and it's so true. There's a girl in the wheelchair, and she's talking to the overweight girl, and she's like, "I don't hate you because you're fat. You're fat because I hate you." And it's like that is
Yeah.
such a good line, right?
Right. And that's like our inner experience,
Uh,
right? Like I'm not making these terrible decisions because I'm a bad person or anything's wrong. And I use that term terrible decisions very lightly, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm not engaging in behaviors that I regret
Mhm.
because I'm a bad person, right? It's because I'm like not being kind to myself. I'm treating myself like I hate myself. And that's making it so much harder to show up in the way that I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like if you guys get anything out of this episode today, that's the whole thing. Just a Mean Girls
Yeah.
quote.
Right. Yes, exactly. Perfect. My 10 and a half year old is like begging to watch Mean Girls. And I'm like, I don't know that we're there yet, but soon. It's
That's
going to
so
be a
funny.
great moment.
Last year for Halloween, we did Mean Girls. I did Damien, and we did like the purple tuxedos. It was so
That's
fun.
incredible. So good. But it really is true. Like your inner narrative, it's something that we discount, right? We dismiss and we say, like, I don't have time to think about my thoughts, but it is everything. It is game changing.
Yeah. I want you guys to have such a good relationship with yourself that you don't even have the pull to want to vape.
Right.
That's the ideal goal. And then I wrote it today I'm doing a webinar and I wrote like the main quote is like, this has everything to do with vaping and nothing to do with vaping at the exact same time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, even if you do vape or even if you do overeat, your relationship with yourself is so solid that it keeps it from being this like spiral of I'm a bad person or I'm never going to get this. Instead, you can just then very cleanly and curiously be like, hey, why did I choose that? Would I choose it again? What would I do differently next time? And then boom, move on.
Yep.
Yeah, so cool.
So I want to ask you, like, if people want to work with you, what is like the traditional way you do it? Or and I'll put your links and everything, but how do you do this?
Awesome.
Is one-on-ones?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one coaching exclusively right now. I really love, group coaching is amazing. I actually lost weight in a group coaching program, but I think a big part of my success was that I'm like such a coaching and psych nerd. I was able to show up.
Yeah.
But I love one-on-one coaching for weight loss because everybody's journey is so different, right? And everybody's like brain drama is so unique. It is just such a great place to be able to like go and meet with somebody. It's 45 minutes every single week, completely devoted to you, where you can just like get it all out and we could find solutions together. So, all this is to say, I do one on one coaching. And I think a great place to get familiar with my work is through my podcast. Again, my podcast is called Weight Loss Doesn't Have to Suck. It's available in all the places. I'm also on Instagram at Kimberly Severson Coaching. And yeah, you can get familiar with me in both of those places. And then to pursue work together, we start with a consultation. We just have a nice, easy chat about what's been going on for you and where you want to go.
Awesome. That's super
Yeah.
simple. And then I just had curiosity for people that might be curious, is the length different for everybody? You just kind of go off of what you think they need, or is it the same time frame?
Usually my clients start with a 12-week package. Not always. I'm very flexible as a coach. I really like to customize it to the person. But what I find is that most people, 12 weeks is a really good amount of time to start to kind of figure out like how to get back in connection with your body, what your unique challenges and obstacles are, We talked about like, oh, just start eating when you're hungry and stop when you're satisfied, which is all well and good. But like, why does that feel hard for you? Or when
Hmm.
do you really struggle with that? So 12 weeks is a really good amount of time to get to know all the tools that I teach my clients. And then to have these kind of like obstacles and little roadblocks come up so we can work on them together so that eventually you do overcome them. They stop becoming obstacles in your life. So we usually start with a 12-week package, not every client, but usually. And then from there, we customize. Some people are like good to go after 12 weeks, which is amazing. Some people still want or need a little bit more support. Sometimes we can do a second round. Sometimes we do shorter sessions. It's really like it's the client and I together
Cool.
deciding what they need after that.
Awesome. That's perfect. So do you want
Yeah.
to add anything else with today's podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think the like main theme today was self-compassion,
Hmm.
right? Just really noticing like, hey, am I treating myself well? Like equally as well when I show up how I want to be showing up and when I'm not
That's
showing up
hard.
how I
That's
want to
hard.
be showing
I'm
up.
not
It
even doing
is.
that.
It is hard, but it just, God, it's like, even if you don't do it for yourself, do it for the results you want because
Mhm.
it's going to help you get there faster.
Yeah.
If you want to stop vaping, if you want to stop overeating, the more you can be kind to yourself when you screw it up. And again, I'm putting that in like heavy air quotes, the easier it's going to be to figure out your stuff, right? And to
Yeah.
get more of those results faster. So, if I can help more people treat themselves kindly, that, I will have done some good work in this world.
Same. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. It was such a delight.
Yeah, it was. Oh my gosh, that was such a good episode. If you guys are considering changing your relationship with food, go check out Kimberly's podcast. Weight Loss Doesn't Have to Suck. It's amazing. I've been listening. It's just so good. And if you're ready to either ditch the vape for good or learn how to have a healthier relationship with nicotine, like we just talked about having with food in this episode, then I recommend you go to my 8-week signature program in my bio, read about it, sign up for your consult, and save your spot because I'm only taking 3 or 4 clients a month, and I already have 3 for this month, and I will take you, but I'm not taking more than 4. So go check it out. I don't want to put you on a wait list. If you join now, you'll literally be vape free before Christmas, and I would love for you to have that result with you and your family so you can actually be fully present and start the new year on a really, really good foot. Thanks for listening, guys. You was kind. You is smart. You is important. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next week.